Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Sessions Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morgenroth, and the present with Matt present. And Matt, obviously, you go ahead and serve as the one of the announcers for the team. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Matt.
I grew up in Maryland, just outside of D.C. Grew up playing sports my whole life, and obviously baseball was a big part of that. Wrote for the high school newspaper, and when I went to college at the University of Maryland, I really got interested in the broadcast side of things. So I was fortunate enough to work with the baseball team there, and since then I've pursued my passion doing it professionally.
Am I having a problem with geography or what? Another Maryland Terp, really?
We are a species that has continued to evolve into bigger and better things. I'm really honored to be here, obviously, and it's a really proud moment for me to be able to not only work with Scott, but to have so many fellow Terps in minor league baseball.
My goodness, what am I, outnumbered here with all you Terps? Everybody's crawling here and stealing the broadcast thunder. Hey, you know what? There's a history of great announcers in the Baltimore area. I'm sure Gary Thorne is a guy that you probably grew up watching an awful lot if you're out there. Brooks Robinson, who I know you may not be young enough to know. Everybody knows Brooks in there, and the beat goes on and on. So let's talk a little bit about Maryland sports and who are some of your idols growing up in that neck of the woods.
In terms of athletes?
Well, not only athletes, but announcers. Obviously, you're in the announcing business, right?
Sure, yeah. In terms of announcers, I mean, there's so many that I've gotten a chance to listen to, and I think it's all about picking and choosing little things you like about each guy. Baseball-wise, Dan Shulman has always really stood out for me. I mean, Mike Tirico can do it all. Kevin Harlan has an incredible voice. He's so versatile. His description is unmatched. So there's so many great announcers. I'm obviously leaving a bunch of talented guys out, but for me, it's just about taking a little bit of different guys and trying to, sample all around and see what I like the best.
Well, yeah, that's a good way of doing it. I don't care what line of business you're in. You shadow this guy, shadow this guy. You're too young to understand, or maybe you do. Ernie Harwell is a mentor of mine.
It's funny. I just had someone earlier today mention his name to me, a guy who's out here working at the stadium, grew up in Detroit, loved listening to Ernie, so certainly a legend in his own right.
Oh, well, guess what? I don't care how old this kid is. If you know my uncle Ernie Harwell, and Ernie Harwell is somebody, Matt, that was very dear to me, then you're all right in my book. Not that you weren't anyways. But let's talk a little bit about your responsibilities here with the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. I know that you serve in the PR department, so why don't you break down your responsibilities and we'll go into more detail about the broadcasting part of this.
Sure. I mean, broadcasting is certainly part of it, but my responsibilities extend to servicing as a liaison in between the team and the media. And, obviously being a team member on this entire staff, we do a whole lot of things that extend beyond, writing press releases, writing game recaps, printing out stat packets and lineups. I mean, look behind us, the tarp might go on the field at some point today. It's gone on and off throughout the series, and it's something that everyone in the front office has a hand in. So in minor league baseball, it's kind of everyone as a team, and that's part of what really makes it fun.
Obviously you're the team's broadcaster. Tell me a little bit about those responsibilities.
It's fun. I mean, it's what you put in the work to do is to call the game every night. I mean, it's what makes working in sports fun, to see the product on the field, and I'm lucky enough to be a part of our broadcasting team with Scott Kornberg, and he's amazing to work with. Like you kind of noted, he and I went to Maryland together. He was a few years ahead of me in school, but I was lucky enough to stay in touch with him, and now we have an opportunity to not only be friends but coworkers.
Well, not only what you know, but who you know, right? There you go. All right, so let's talk about your experience in the independent league. As I understand, you work for the York Revolution of the Atlantic League. Go ahead and explain more about that situation.
It was my first job out of college. I knew I wanted to get into minor league baseball, and I applied for a bunch of stuff, and that was the one I decided on right out of school the following season. And I worked with Darryl Henry, who's been their broadcaster as long as that team's been around, and he's super talented. It's a really beautiful ballpark in York, Pennsylvania. And I think a lot of people probably don't know a whole lot about independent league baseball, and there's so many different experiences in independent ball. Certainly there's like the Young Frontier League. Obviously there's a lot of talk about the American Association, but the Atlantic League is really talented. I had an amazing time there. We were the last place team halfway through the season and ended up winning the championship. So it was an amazing turnaround, really cool to be a part of it, and to be a part of a team with some former big leaguers on it, guys who had continued to play for the love of the game, also some younger guys who were just trying to get seen for the first time. So it's a really interesting dynamic, and it was a really cool start to my career.
You talk about some of the former big leaguers. Why don't you mention a few of those?
Alexi Casilla is the one that really stood out for me because I grew up not too far from Baltimore, so obviously saw him a little bit with the Orioles, and so it was really cool to work with him a little bit. The one thing I'll never forget about him is he could bunt one-handed in a game, just take his top hand off the bat, cross over, and punch it down the line and try to beat it out for a hit. But he was really cool. There's so many guys that are on that team that still come to mind every now and then when I think back to those days. But not everyone's baseball career results in making the major leagues, but there are a lot of guys at that level that really love the game, and it was a joy to be around them.
Yeah, the only thing I knew about the Atlantic League up until I've talked to you is the Gastonia Honey Hunters are a brand new team that actually they built a brand new park out in that area. Prior to that, I worked with the Gastonia Rangers another lifetime ago in 1987. Major leaguers, both manager, coaches, players, Sammy Sosa, Juan Gonzalez, even a young guy like you can appreciate some of those guys.
For sure.
So I'm definitely well aware of the Atlantic League per se, and Gastonia Honey Hunters, until you brought it up, your gig certainly is another reminder that you can find a lot of good players in that league. And you know what, anytime you have scouts, their eyes are all over the place. There's a zillion ballparks out here, and you don't know where that next major leaguer is going to come from, do you?
Well, not just that, but the Atlantic League in the last couple seasons has also become a testing ground for a lot of the new rules in professional baseball, both at the major league and minor league affiliated levels. So the Atlantic League debuted robot umpires. They're this summer going to push the mound back a foot, which I know is a hot topic of conversation across baseball. And it doesn't mean that all those rules are perfect or all those rules are going to be implemented in the big leagues, but it's cool to kind of have that league get some additional attention because they're that testing ground for the major leagues.
Oh, well, that's an interesting point, Matt. Okay, you talk about a couple of the new rule changes. Which ones intrigue you the most?
For me, I think pushing the mound back is the one that resonates the most because I was reading an article, I think it was in The Athletic a week or two ago, that the difference between a 92-mile-an-hour fastball and a 94-mile-an-hour fastball is about 70 points on the batting average, which is just astronomical for such a minute increase in velocity. And pitchers nowadays are throwing mid to upper 90s consistently. Some guys are throwing 100 miles an hour. So you can implement all these different rules, and I'm not knocking baseball. You've got to try to evolve as a game. Every other sport has changed their rules in various ways, but I think the one that's going to have the biggest impact on not only time of game but also the excitement and the action, I think, is moving the mound back a foot, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the Atlantic League.
What are your thoughts about robot umpires?
It's interesting. I think right now we're not at the point where they're 100% accurate. So I from my impression and talking to some folks who were in the Low A Southeast League right now, formerly the Florida State League, is they're imperfect just like humans. To me, if you can get it to a point where it's 100% accurate, I like it. I do like the human element though as well, and I think the biggest thing for me and the human element of it is it really adds value to catchers.
Right.
And their ability to frame pitches, their ability to develop a rapport with an umpire. So I don't have a strong feeling either way, but I certainly do get the sense we're moving in the direction of robot umpires.
Well, you're talking to a former catcher. Back in the day when I played ball, I was able to play catcher in Little League for a few years. So if there's anybody that knows, Matt, about framing pitches, talking to the batters, distracting these, getting in the umpire's ears, going to my pitcher just to play the mind games of all these, I certainly know. And one of the things I've always liked to do, folks out there, is interview catchers throughout my sports media career, which, by the way, spans all of 42 years, okay, long before you were hatched. and I've always really enjoyed the catching dynamic in terms of how things are done. So do you remember that when Don Mattingly said that baseball's unwatchable? Did you hear that?
I think I read a headline about it. I don't know if I listened to the full quote. I don't know that I think it's unwatchable, but I do think that it's not quite as exciting pitch in and pitch out as it may have been 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, but do you remember hearing it?
The quote?
Yeah.
No.
That he said baseball was unwatchable.
No, I think I read the headline. I don't know if I heard it from the horse's mouth.
Well, the reason why I'm mentioning that to you folks is I'm the guy over in the Marlins Media Availability call that went ahead and asked Don Mattingly about all those no-hitters, and he went on to say that baseball's unwatchable. And at that time, 392,000 people were able to, who knows whether that number's over 400,000. So let me preface by saying, okay, with all the things that are going on right now, do you, Matt, present, feel that to some extent baseball is unwatchable?
No, I wouldn't use that word. I think there's certainly room for there to be more excitement, more gap-to-gap hitters, more stolen bases. But look, I wouldn't be sitting in a booth calling baseball every night if I thought it was unwatchable.
Well, it's okay. Well, that's a very good point. I mean, a lot of people feel differently because of the way the game has evolved, changes, and so forth. Anytime you see a tremendous amount of no-hitters going on, then you see all the sticky substances, all the things that are going on. Obviously, Major League Baseball is doing everything in their power to try to clean the game up and so forth. So I know one of your passions was Davidson Football. Is that correct? So why don't you talk about that experience a little bit?
Well, it was a really cool opportunity to join Davidson this past spring and be their play-by-play guy for what was really a historic season for them. It was the first time they've ever made the FCS playoffs, and I was lucky enough to be a part of it and work with a really great coaching staff, a great group of guys. And obviously 2020 was really challenging in a lot of ways, and they weren't sure that they were going to get to play 2021, having their fall season postponed. So to be able to move that into the spring, to be able to see them get out there and play, and to see them have so much success, it was really special to be a part of it.
You're calling AAA baseball. What's that like?
It's fun. It's exciting. The atmosphere here in Jacksonville is, I think, unmatched across AAA baseball. But in terms of calling the games, it's not all that much different than calling independent league baseball or calling single A baseball. I mean, I think you can't look at it as being, oh my gosh, it's AAA. Like, you're still doing the same job, and no matter where I'm calling games, whether I'm doing it at the high school level, the college level, or the professional level, I mean, I'm going to put my best foot forward no matter if it's single A or AAA.
Well, okay, and that's a great point too, because whether you're in Class A, whether it's low A, high A, double A, whatever, do you feel that the psychology of being able to go out there and call them at the AAA level gets you that much closer to the major leagues, or do you feel that probably at maybe a year from now you could be over in Class A or whatever the case may be? I mean, depending on what the opportunities are that time.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that goes into it. Certainly, I think there are more guys, broadcasters that make the major leagues from AAA than single A, but I think a lot has to do with the individual organization that you're working with in terms of the parent club. It has to do with what jobs come available, what connections you might have, and certainly a lot to do with the ownership group. And we're really fortunate here to have Ken Babby as a leader of Fast Forward Sports and a tremendous ownership group. We've had a ton of support this year, and it certainly shows in terms of what we as the Jumbo Shrimp are able to put out, for fans every night.
What are your thoughts about working with the Miami Marlins organization? I know that they certainly have had a nice shuttle back and forth, with some of their current players and so forth, and this is the first year at the AAA level.
Yeah.
But the Marlins are classy. I work with them all the time.
It's been really exciting to see so many of their big league guys come through here. Certainly you don't root for injuries, but given that guys are injured, to be able to see them make rehab starts. And tonight we'll have Nick Neidert on the mound. He'll be the 9th different rehabber that's come through Jacksonville this year. So it's really exciting to see those guys. Even more exciting to see the likes of Jesus Sanchez go up to the major leagues, who started here and was so successful to begin play this year in Jacksonville. So that dynamic is really fun to be a part of.
And a couple other questions, by the way. My name is Scott Morganroth. This is Matt President. You're on 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. You can follow us on Twitter at Tribune South as well, the YouTube channel, and as well as www.southfloridatribune.com. So let's talk about some of the top prospects that you see in the Marlins system. You've obviously been at the AAA level. If anybody's more qualified to answer that question, it's definitely you, right?
I guess so. I mean, certainly myself and Scott are fortunate enough to call the games every night and watch a lot of talented players.
Okay, but do you have any that stand out so far that you've seen?
I mean, Jesus Sanchez has to be at the top of that list. What he did this season was really special. I mean, he was hitting over 500 for the first month or so of the season, and he's a guy who at the major league level last year got his first crack at it, and it didn't quite go as well as he would have liked. But to see him out here every day, and as much fun as it was to watch him hit 500, I've told people he could have been hitting 200 because he just plays the game with such joy, with a smile on his face. He's tossing balls to fans. He's interacting. He just has a larger-than-life persona and just exudes happiness. It was really cool to see him out here and really cool to see him have success at the big league level. Another guy, Cody Poteet, only made one start here, but he was, lighting up the radar gun, and, to see him breeze right up to the major leagues. And Zach Thompson, I think, is another guy who's, probably not the quintessential capital P prospect, but to see him go through his career. I have some friends who worked with him when he was in the White Sox organization, and to see him put in all the work, be an older guy, not again, be someone who scouts are coming to see every night,
Right.
but to see him evolve into a guy who's gone up to the major league level and had some of the best success of his career in Miami.
I know Miguel Rojas is a guy that I'm sure you probably enjoyed seeing for the short time that he was here.
Yeah, he's awesome. He was a class act here. Just the way he embraced his teammates, embraced the fans. You know, he knew he would only be here for a couple days, but he really ingratiated himself with the Jacksonville community, and we were lucky to have him.
Two other things that just entered my mind. Number one, obviously part of an announcer's job is to be able to talk to the players and the coaches on a regular basis. Because of COVID-19, putting a bunch of protocols in place, how much do you feel that's affected your ability to bring the game to people as much as you would like to, knowing that the preparation nowadays is a bit different than it has been in past years prior to COVID-19?
Sure. It's certainly frustrating. We wish we were able to stand around the batting cage every day and get those tidbits that we once were, but you know, you talk about calling baseball at the AAA level. I think that's the biggest difference is so many guys on our team have more established careers, and so it's a lot easier to research them. There have been stories written on them throughout their lives, and so the information that we have at our disposal through research on these guys is a lot greater than perhaps at the low A level.
So even though you're not able to have the direct contact, Matt, that you'd like to have, the presence of Google and being able to do everything through electronic media probably enables you to go ahead and make up and supplement the coverage. Is that correct?
For sure. And between Scott Kornberg and myself, we've worked in baseball for several different organizations, and so it's given us the opportunity to network and to reach out to some of our contacts, some of our friends across the minor league baseball landscape and say, hey, you had this guy in 2018. What do you have on him? Any stories, any interesting nuggets? And so that's been cool too, to kind of rekindle some friendships, trading information.
Okay, and finally, obviously, we know you have a goal to get to the major leagues, as do a lot of younger people. But I remember when my initial dream was I would go to Tiger Stadium and do some play-by-play in the bleachers all by myself, and I would do it in front of my home. Was there any particular thing that you did that triggered your mindset about, I want to be a play-by-play, and how did you do things at the beginning, and what's your time frame to hope to get where you're going to get? I know that's a loaded question, but there's a lot to digest there.
Sure. I mean, for me, the start came in the Cal Ripken League. It's a wood bat summer league in the DC area. And I grew up going to games there with my dad. Was fortunate enough in middle school to start working for them as a scoreboard operator and official scorer. And there were some different teams in that league that actually had broadcasters, and that's kind of what piqued my interest for the first time. And that's when I was working my way through high school, and I knew that once I got to the University of Maryland for college that I wanted to get into the play-by-play side of things. And so that's kind of where my inspiration came from. And fortunately, Maryland has a really great broadcasting program with so many opportunities to call all the different sports there. And so it was really awesome to get those experiences at an early age and kind of validate for myself that this is what I want to pursue. In terms of a timeline, I don't really worry about that. For me, as long as I'm enjoying coming to the ballpark every day or whatever other sport I'm calling, as long as I'm having fun, it doesn't really matter to me exactly where I end up and when.
I guess the one thing that you can feel very good about, as long as you're gainfully employed, earning a living, doing this, the longer you stay in the game, then it gives you a much greater shot. And unfortunately, you don't have the luxury where a lot of famous broadcasters, kids get it automatically. You have to, like the Garagiolas, the Carries, and so forth. And, so you really have to base your performance on that you hope that somebody will get the right ear based on your style. Is there any particular style that you like to go ahead and convey to some of your fans? Is it like whether it's a catchphrase or whether it's just, I'm not monotone, but I give you a lot of information and things along those lines?
I'll tell you, when I was with the Texas Rangers, with the Down East Wood Ducks, their high affiliate, I had a chance to go to Arlington, and CJ Nitkowski, who's on the Rangers broadcast, told me something that's really stuck with me, and it's the 3 S's: stats, stories, and silence, and to balance those 3. And I think that's something I've tried to keep at a point of consciousness, to be able to have stories to connect these players with the fans, to be able to contextualize their performance on the field with the stats, and then also just to sit back. You don't always have to be going, especially with the great crowds we have here in Jacksonville. Sometimes letting that shine through is just as important.
And you talked about Jacksonville. You got to love these fans. They're unbelievable. This is my first opportunity to see some games here in Jacksonville. What are your thoughts about the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp?
It's awesome. I think what's most impressive about our fans is we'll draw 6,000 or 7,000 on our biggest nights, Fridays and Saturdays, and maybe for some holidays it'll be even more than that. But what gets me going is the fact that on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, the raw number isn't the same, but the energy in the building is matched with the play on the field. And what I mean by that is, if there's an exciting play, the crowd is going nuts. They're in tune with the baseball. And there's so many places around minor league baseball, and there's nothing wrong with it. Being someone who's bounced around to 4 different stops now, I certainly understand that there's a lot more to it than just the product on the field. Love the promotions, love the food, love being with their family. But to have so many people here locked in to what's happening every single pitch, and to have that energy and that enthusiasm, kind of follow the curve of the action, really is fun to be a part of.
So you're a Baltimore Orioles kid, right? I
grew up with the Orioles, yeah. I've kind of come to embrace all the different teams I've worked for, and kind of, I feel like now I follow more players than I follow teams, guys that I've grown up working with now in the minor leagues. But yeah, growing up, I was an Orioles fan.
So you almost felt like as a dream you wanted to be an Orioles announcer, right?
It's funny. I don't know that I ever exactly had that dream. I think a lot of announcers, come up listening and like, I listen to these guys. I want to be those guys. I don't know that the connection was the same for me in my head. I think I wanted to be an announcer. I wanted to do play-by-play. I wanted to be at games. I wanted to be a part of the action. I wanted to build relationships with the guys I covered. But I don't know that I ever was like, I want to be the next Orioles announcer. Not that I would turn that down by any means, but I don't know that kind of the dots were connected that way in my head.
So did you have a favorite team growing up?
Man, my parents will tell you embarrassingly that when I was 7 years old, I wanted to be a lawnmower guy or a trash guy, because I was infatuated with all the stuff that would go on outside our house in the neighborhood. I was always a kid who played outside. I don't know that I've ever really had one specific dream job. I just.
What about favorite major league team?
I don't have one
anymore.
I mean,
look at this guy.
Now it's the Marlins, right? Because you become attached to the team you're working with. You become attached to the players that you're calling because you want the success for them. You start to feel a certain way about those guys, and certainly the Orioles' lack of success in recent years hasn't kept me super in touch with them. But to be able to work with so many different organizations, and some guys I've worked with have been traded to other clubs, and so to have so many different guys that I've been a part of across the Major League Baseball landscape and the minor league baseball landscape as well. That's really what I find to be really cool.
Matt, I will tell you this. You are a bright young guy, and I'll tell you why. That was a great answer, and I tried to set you up, and I'll tell you why I did that. Number one, as a Tigers guy growing up as a kid, I worked with the Fort Lauderdale Yankees, so I became part of me was a Yankee guy for a while. I set you up, and you were phenomenal, just so you know. And then I went out there and worked with the Cincinnati Reds for a while. Then I had passion for the Texas Rangers scouts in their system, and now work with the Marlins. So you know what, folks? Let me tell you something about Matt Present. He took the Motor City Mad Mouth's best shot, and I am really, really proud of this kid for going out there and doing exactly what you did. Most people would have took the bait, but you did not take the bait. I am so proud of you for doing that. So meanwhile, my name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Mad Mouth, here on 108 Inches Baseball Talk. With me over at 121 Financial Ballpark with Matt Present, the broadcaster for the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. Well, Matt, I got to tell you, it's really been a lot of fun having you on the broadcast today, and I look forward to working with UNC again. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope wherever you wind up, whatever you do, whatever team you're working with, and because you're right, over the years, I have built a lot of great relationships with players over the years. And, when you look at it from a business standpoint versus what it is to take the heart away and the mindset away, that's really what this is all about. Relationships, folks. It isn't the team, but the relationships, because those are the ones that will last forever, just like we've had an opportunity today to build a relationship as well. So, once again, thanks for joining 108 Inches Baseball Talk with Matt Present. My name is Scott Morganroth of Motor City Mad Mouth. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you very much, Matt.
Absolutely. My pleasure.